I believe we're on air.
We are live.
It's what we always do, though. We give it the 5 seconds, the proper amount of time.
Exactly.
And then there it is. Lovely. Great stuff. I have a nice Marmot shirt on right now.
The Strikers, a throwback.
That is.
Yeah.
That is. So we did get some comments while entering the studio from fans who were lining the doors, obviously, trying to maybe get some autographs and whatnot before we got in. Just saying, like, why
just
are
the
you...
normal,
walk
stuff. Through the house.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so the fans were like, well, where's the COG Weekly merch? Where's the COGM merch? And we're like, sometimes we want to make it casual. We want to just keep it laid back. For some of you, it's 9:45 right now. You don't want anything that is too crazy. You know what I mean? But something that is super crazy and we need to touch on and is really sad that's going on right now. Obviously, it's the title of this episode, and it is what's going on in Ukraine right now. And obviously, it is impacting football in very drastic ways, not only with what it's doing to certain players from Ukraine and Russia, but also what it's doing to clubs with higher-ups, and also what it's doing to national teams. So I know you can touch on that a little bit before we get into the other stuff that we're going to talk about this week.
Yeah, I mean, it's like kind of grown and grown through the world of football, which obviously we have more connections to. And so like a lot of clubs have, and even I believe UEFA or someone ended sponsorships with Russian brand, like, Gazprom or whatever.
Yeah.
So that a lot of teams ended their sponsorships with that big brand that's from Russia. Russian players actually have posted on their social media against war.
Small of.
Yeah, exactly. As well as obviously Ukrainian players and really a lot of footballers everywhere, no matter the nationality, in their support of Ukraine. And then just today, I believe, UEFA and FIFA agreed to kick Russia out of World Cup 2022 in Qatar. They were in the play-in tournament for it.
Similar to what the United States was in.
Yeah.
In entering the 2018 World Cup phase, when obviously the U.S. failed to win against Trinidad and Tobago and then failed to make the World Cup 2018. But yeah, Russia were in a similar situation than that. But then UEFA eventually kicked them out after this.
So yeah, they're not even going to be allowed to play if they even were able to play to get into the World Cup. And then probably the biggest news in terms of football is Roman Abramovich, who has been the owner of Chelsea for nearly 20 years, who really has been I feel like he was the first owner to come in and really transform.
Yeah.
Spend a lot of money, as we see now with Man City and PSG, but he was kind of, I feel like, the first that I knew of, at least, who turned Chelsea from an average side to one of the best teams in England, if not the world. He had a statement. It was pretty vague, but something along the lines of he's handing over some kind of responsibility to the foundation, Chelsea Foundation, because he is a Russian billionaire and he has ties to Putin. So it's a lot of, he doesn't want to have him associated with the club at this moment, I think.
Which is smart of him, and I respect that and understand that. The exact words or translation that was used was he's handing over stewardship, which is kind of a tricky one and somewhat confusing, as obviously he still owns the club but is not making, decisions that impact them at the present moment. And instead, the Chelsea organization is doing that. But there has been some backlash. The Chelsea organization has refused that, and the Premier League is currently trying to work on a way for Chelsea to be still a club that is functioning and has someone making decisions, whilst having their official owner having stepped away and saying that he's not going to be involved during this crazy time right now. But overall, there's been a lot of response. I mean, Zinchenko was making a lot of headlines. He was crying while warming up for a game, and other players maybe not as high quality or on as good of teams, but other players who have been impacted more or the same as Zinchenko have come out and spoke on this a lot, which is, I think, helping connect the football community to what really needs to happen right now in Ukraine and help connect the world to what really needs to be happening in Ukraine. And that's, everyone noticing what is happening and was wrong and how we need to fix this, not only in Ukraine right now, but on a larger scale of things.
Yeah, I think football is obviously one of the biggest parts of a large part of the world and people's lives, and it's very important to them. So having that positive influence against what's happening right now from big name players, big name clubs, and everywhere in the world of football will then help outside of it.
Yep.
Because people are influenced a lot by, their club, what they have to say, their favorite players. So it's just another use of their voices and their platform for good. So I think
exactly
the response has been good. But
we obviously had to touch on that
yeah.
and make sure that everyone knew where we stood and everything, and that we were going to make sure that got the recognition that it needed right now, as that's the main thing that's going on in the world that people need to be aware of and need to respect and keep in consideration in their minds and their thoughts. But moving on to the regular list, the regular agenda that we do every single week, starting with the Hasani of the week, we have 3 candidates again, still going with the traditional or the new traditional of 3 candidates where we debate, we give them scores, we see what the chat has to say, and then we find our winner. So this week, our 3 candidates are Kelleher, the Liverpool goalkeeper who played in the EFL Carabao Cup Final and won it with them, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, currently with Barcelona, and Carlos Veya, who played his first game in the MLS this season 2 days ago, I believe.
Yeah,
and did very well. We'll talk about that. But 3 players who definitely deserve to be on that list of nominees. And starting with Kelleher, who is a backup goalkeeper for Liverpool and has only really gotten his time in the EFL Carabao Cup so far, did a fantastic job throughout the game, throughout the 120 minutes. You can't say he did a fantastic job during the shootout, considering both goalkeepers let in 10 penalties. But he did Kepa let in 11.
Yeah, that's true.
But both goalkeepers let in as many penalties as they could, but he did a fantastic job throughout the game, and he made some huge saves.
Exactly.
So, overall, great performance from him.
Yeah, 6 saves overall. Probably most notably the one against Pulisic really early on in the game, like point blank save. Really keeping Liverpool in a game where Chelsea had a lot of chances, a lot of grade A chances where Mount missed a couple, and Chelsea maybe should have gone in front, but it stayed 0-0. We'll talk about that game a little more, but obviously Mendy as well on the other side had a very good game, but
fantastic
subbed out for Kepa, as you said. I feel like Kelleher is nominated just because, like you said, backup keeper Klopp said he knows he's ready for the big stage for Liverpool, and he wanted to see him do that, and he delivered. You can't really do much better than
clean sheet against Chelsea outside of the pens. It was a tough one, but his first time in a cup final, his first time really playing in a huge match for Liverpool, and that being a cup final that went into extra time, went into penalties, and went to a place where he himself had to take a penalty, is something that you rarely, if ever, will see in your lifetime. And for Kelleher to be the person in that position, huge props to him. He handled the pressure really well. Like you said, he had that great save on Pulisic in the beginning of the game. He also had a great foot save towards the end of the game in extra time. And yes, Liverpool's defense was very, very good, but he did a fantastic job keeping the ball out of the net. You know what I mean? So he is up there most definitely. The next most notable player that we're going to talk about is someone who has, since the last podcast that we did, scored 2 goals in 2 games, but we're also considering his performance 8 days ago, where he scored 3 goals, one which was a bit iffy and went off the back of Pedri, but still got a hat trick, and that is Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, who has 5 goals in now 3 games, and seems to be off to a fantastic start with Barcelona, and something that we didn't see really at all towards the end of his Arsenal career.
No, and I remember you said last pod, you're like, oh, he probably should get a honorable mention or whatever for the Hasani because he did score the hat trick. But I mean, Barca have really turned it around in their last 3 games. They've scored 4 goals in those last 3 games, so 16 or 12 in all. And I mean, they're back to their best. Xavi hasn't played great football, and Aubameyang, you know, I don't know how many would have predicted him to get off to this good a start. Also, shout out to Adama Traore as well, who, if you watch like that Napoli game especially, he was making very good drives with the ball and then laying it off and creating chances. So
first assist of the game to Jordi Alba.
Exactly.
Went up the field, did very well, and overall has been playing very well under that Xavi system, which is, you know, a whole nother story, but he was counted out to do so throughout his time at Barca. So yeah, Pierre-Emerick does get a nomination, and rightfully so. And, you know, overall, I think he's been doing very well. And if he continues this form throughout the rest of the season, I think we're going to see Pierre back to the level of praise that he was getting from the fans at Dortmund and early Barca or early Arsenal days. And then the third player that we'll be talking about is an MLS player, but to be fair, an MLS player who has for the past 3-4 years been considered one of, if not the best player in the whole league, and that's Carlos Veya, who on his first game back with LAFC in the 2022-23 MLS season scored a fantastic hat-trick. Typical Carlos Veya fashion, 3 great goals, and overall a fantastic performance.
Exactly. LAFC obviously didn't do great last season, underperformed, but Veya, like you said, just levels above, it seems, that with some of his performances in the past couple of seasons. Do you think he will be, do you think he'll like push on to be that best player? Do you think maybe Chicharito or newly Douglas Costa as well, who's come in for LA Galaxy, might, rival that spot?
Talking about the player of the year, I think if I'm just isolating Douglas Costa, it's a hard one. I know Peyton Thomas, co-host for the Supporters Pod, talked about this about 4 or 5 episodes ago on their podcast when Douglas was originally moving over, and he was discussing how Douglas Costa is a great player, but at the same time, he's not someone who's going to come over and be MVP caliber right away in his first season, because you have people like Chicharito in front of you who can feed. He's going to get some assists and he's going to get a goal here or there, but we think, or at least he thinks, and I would agree with him, that he's going to ease his way in. And especially in the position that he's going to be playing, I think it's much more likely that Chicharito gets that fame because he is playing that out now. Number 9, he's going to get the goals, and they're not going to highlight the person who might be bringing the ball down the field as much. That being said, Carlos Veya versus Chicharito, at the moment I'd probably go Chicharito because prolific striker, well-known striker and whatnot. But I do think that if Carlos Veya finds the form that he had 2 seasons ago, there's no question that he could be MVP, and rightfully so.
Yeah, and I feel like, so Veya did score it against Colorado Rapids, who were number 1 seed in the West last season. And I feel like, looking at the results from opening weekend, the Western Conference definitely won this one, I feel like.
Yeah.
LA Galaxy beat New York City, who were the reigning champions. Chicharito did score in the 90th minute to win that game. Portland drew with New England, who New England were the number 1 seed as well in the East, and Portland obviously in the finals last year too. So honestly, Austin winning 5-0, it's going to be pretty interesting.
It will.
We can touch on the United game after we finish up the Hasani, but, unpredictability, as we said.
It is the most unpredictable league. So I was looking at the odds for each team to win the MLS Cup, and LAFC were first in those rankings that were posted by, it might have been Bleacher Report or someone like that. And the odds were 750 to 1. And that is incredibly low. And then you look at Minnesota United, and they're 2,500 to 1, and then the lower teams are like 7,500 to 1. But just showing that, 750 to 1 is incredibly small odds. So no one has very good odds to win it. They can't. They have no idea what's going on or who's going to lift the trophy at the end of the year. It's mostly just a projection of preseason and last season somewhat. But like you said, LAFC not having the best year last year. it's entirely just up in the air. No one really knows what's going on. Those predictions that people post are ones that are, I think, invalid entirely until you get later in the season and can see how teams are doing. But it is interesting to see that, even the biggest media outlets recognize that you can't predict it. You just can't at all.
No.
But he had a great game, Carlos Veya himself, and definitely deserved that Hasani of the Week nomination. So now me and you can hash it out. If anyone watching wants to put in the chat who they think the Hasani of the Week would be and the rating, you can. But first off, who do we think the main player will be before we put our ratings down?
For me, I'm gonna go Kelleher.
Okay.
Because, like you said, very good performance for him being a backup goalie over Alisson at Liverpool, Cup Final, Wembley, sold out, 6 saves, winning penalty, so many things to go off of. Obviously, Aubameyang, he is on very good form, and I think that is very credible. But Veya as well, a hat trick. We have a lot of hat tricks, to be honest.
We do.
Sterling. I just think Kelleher, for his position and stepping up to the occasion in such a big game for a trophy, is well worth the Hasani of the Week.
So I'm going to back that as well. He had a good performance all around. He made some really good saves, like we said. And he was in a game that, although is not considered in the traditional treble, was still a cup final. And it's one of the 3 major domestic things you can win within England, which is arguably the best league system of professional soccer in the world. So he stepped up to the occasion, he delivered, and with the pressure that must have been on him in extra time, late extra time, and then also penalties, even stepping up to take his own, which he buried.
Yeah.
It's one of those where you just have to give it to him out of respect, out of the occasion. It's a combination of everything. Sure, Carlos Veya got the hat trick. That's great. He's done well. Sure, Aubameyang has 5 goals in 3 games, but these are games, it's opening day of the MLS season, or it's league games throughout for Barcelona or Europa League. And overall, you look at their last 4 games that Aubameyang has been a part of, and if he doesn't score those goals, they're actually still winning.
Yeah.
He's not making them win or being the main contributor to their success. He's just adding on to it. I mean, there's something to be said for, and we will talk about it later when we talk about our predictions from last week, but Barca doing so well at just getting in 4 goals consistently throughout the past couple games and continuing their form and continuing to push on. So that being said, I think definitely Kelleher deserves it. And so he's the player that we'll be voting on. I see that we have one for 8.5. I would probably go an 8 because, it's hard. Anthony Elanga got an 8 last week.
Yeah.
And it's hard to... I think you have to have a really good performance to go above an 8. You have to be world-class, and he wasn't. We're just, we're respecting the occasion. It's similar to that Elanga moment where we're respecting the occasion and whatnot. So I would go with a solid 8.
I would go probably 8.5 as well. I think there's not much he could do better, or any goalie, as we saw with Mendy. Even though his side did lose, I think there's not much you can do better as a goalie in a performance in a big game. And I think 8.5, definitely better than the Sterling and Elanga of the past 2 weeks. So yeah, I think that's fair. And then also Sutton, do you have a vote?
Oh yeah, we can include Sutton on this.
One important detail is Kelleher, the goalie, is ginger, so
he is ginger.
That might influence your vote there.
We're just out of 10. What are you saying?
Yeah.
Taking into account everything, I'm going to go a 9.
Okay, so we've got a 9 there. So I'll add that.
Like a 7.5, but
but he's ginger, so you have to add
ginger does
it.
Add 2
if people
points,
couldn't hear that on the mics, Sutton said, I was going to go with a 7.5, but because he's ginger, I have to add those points and bring him up to a 9.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking we should get a Sutton microphone so that he can...
It might be an investment.
It might be an investment for the future.
Yeah.
So that he can just make his little bits and bobs here and there. Okay, so that we'll give like 20 more seconds, but right now our average would be 8.5 exactly.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. I do as well. We'll give it a little bit more. Sutton Mice. I don't think we're meaning to say Sutton Mice there, Angie, but
Sutton Nice.
Sutton Nice or Sutton Mice. You know,
Mike.
Sutton Mike. Oh, so it wasn't nice. It was Mike. It was
right.
Mike. Mice, multiple mics.
Yes.
Sutton with multiple. You know when they do the
surround sound
of Sutty.
Yeah.
You can just hear him clicking away and
That's
whatnot.
terrifying.
Oh, and a Sutton camera. Sutton, when are we gonna do a face reveal?
Special occasion.
It has to be a special occasion.
Episode 100.
Episode
Yeah.
100. Everything is coming on episode 100. I swear. But yes, okay. So I think that makes time for everything. So our final is 8.5 for Kelleher. I think that's respectable.
We just keep going up in the
We do. It went
ratings there.
7.5 for Raheem Sterling, then 8 for Anthony Olenga, and now 8.5 for Kelleher.
But we need that like initial group so we can then compare.
It's a control.
Yeah, we need the control so we can compare to see, all right, this guy got these many goals, this guy had that performance. How does that compare to the ones we've given before? And then we'll even out, I feel like.
Exactly. So we've realized while we were away from the pod for the past couple days that oftentimes we give our predictions for next week, but we haven't been reviewing the predictions we made for last week and reviewing those games and talking about what happened. So going around with last week's predictions, we had Napoli, Barcelona, Philly versus Minnesota United, and Chelsea versus Liverpool. And these were the 3 games that we predicted on, starting with Napoli versus Barcelona, which was, like we said last week, initially 1-1 on aggregate. And Barca actually eventually won this game 4-2. And overall, Xavi has been doing absolute bits with this Barca team. The first goal came from Jordi Alba. It was done really nicely by Adama Traore. It was passed up to him by, I believe, Frankie de Jong, and then he took it really nicely, used his strength that we all know he has, and then just dinked it to the side for Jordi Alba to finish. The second goal was Frankie de Jong, which was an absolute belter from about 30 yards out. Third goal was, I believe, Aubameyang.
Was it PK?
It might have been PK, but it was one of the two. Aubameyang and PK scored as the last 2 goals.
Aubameyang's was very good as well.
Exactly. And the 2 goals for Napoli were Insigne off a penalty and Politano late in the game when it didn't really matter anymore. Napoli are now out of the Europa League, which is a bit of a shock, but it was a hard matchup to come against, especially with the Barca team doing this well right now. So I think we have to touch on, I know we talked about it a little bit earlier with Aubameyang doing well, but just how much Xavi has changed this side.
I mean, yeah, obviously as we touched on when he was first hired as the manager and had those first couple games, Barca were already low in form, but then now last probably 5 games or so, they've really picked it up. They're scoring goals as freely as we've seen Barca teams in the past and not conceding many as well. So I feel like he's really figured it out. He's had his time with the team to implement his play style. I think it's just great to see. Obviously, it would have been not a great story if he comes back to his club that he made his name and then he kind of flops as a manager. So Hopefully he continues this. And I mean, Europa League could be a realistic goal now, since they're past Napoli. They have that confidence. I mean, I don't know how many better teams there are in Europa League that didn't get knocked out in this round. So yeah, I think obviously right now their goals are top 4 in La Liga, definitely. And then I think Europa League they should definitely focus on now because I think that would be huge for a trophy for Xavi's first year.
Exactly. And right now in La Liga, they're sitting in 4th place with 45 points. Real Madrid are a ways away in first with 60, but Real Betis are only 1 point ahead of them, and they could possibly catch up to Sevilla, who are 9 points ahead of them right now. Yeah. So there is some room with a lot of time left, and they definitely, I think, can hold that top 4 spot throughout the rest of the La Liga season. So I think that's definitely, like you said, a realistic goal. And then just getting that Europa League, proving that coming from the back of a really unsuccessful time with Ronald Koeman and completely changing the culture and intensity of play and how they play, and getting the reward for that, getting your Europa League trophy, getting top 4 when everyone counted you out mid-season and whatnot. I think that would be a huge accomplishment for Xavi. Really respect him as a coach. It's going to show how well he actually did when he wasn't in La Liga, when he was back in Saudi Arabia, I believe, and just how good of a coach he is at spreading his philosophy and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, do you think, I have my own opinion on this, but do you think it was smart that he did go to a very unknown and relatively unwatched league to start and really find out what it's like to be a manager, what it's like to have your own play style, not getting constant like reporters and media being like, oh, he's not good, all that? Because like as far as we know, European media and US media never really touched on Xavi's team when he started out unless they were doing well, and they did do well. So I think that's probably a very smart move that maybe other young managers might have to look at and follow.
Yeah, I would completely agree. I think that it was quite possibly the smartest move that he could have done as an upcoming manager. And the reason for that is not only the seclusion of the league and the lack of outside media from Europe and the United States and whatnot, but also the fact that he was going to a powerhouse club in that league and given financial resources to succeed. So he was basically put in a situation where he's not being watched very heavily, and on top of that, he has an abundance of resources to create his play style and create the type of team he wants to, and experiment and tweak things here and tweak things there to really find his identity as a manager and what kind of team he wants. And so he built that when he was in Saudi Arabia. I keep saying Saudi Arabia, and I don't know 100%. We should probably check, but I'm pretty sure he was in Saudi Arabia. But he built that when he was over there, and then having that play style, having that sense of identity as a manager has allowed him to come to Barcelona and totally implement that without having the chance of making mistakes and not knowing what you're going to do and having to tinker around with things while you're with Barcelona, resulting in you not living up to the expectations as a manager and your team not succeeding. So overall, I think it was an unbelievable decision from him to go over there, and I think he used that opportunity really well.
So yeah, he managed Al Sadd, and they were in the Qatar Stars League.
Qatar, okay. So yeah, obviously the only time I ever saw them was when they scored a fantastic goal, and people were like, Xavi's doing so well. But every time that team didn't do well, if there was, it never got sent over to media in Europe or the United States. So I think he made a huge decision there, and it turned out to be really, really well. Angie said smarter than Oscar going to China. I think they're totally different. Oscar was going for a bit of the money, a bit of cash.
Yeah, maybe.
And maybe that's a smart decision for him.
True.
Obviously, certain people are driven by different things. But I think Xavi's decision was definitely better for his future footballing and managing career. Moving to the next match, which we predicted last week, and it is coming back to the MLS. We already talked about it once with Carlos Veya, and now we're going to talk about it with Minnesota United, our very own team that we watch and support. But that match that we predicted was Philadelphia Union versus Minnesota United FC, which ended as a 1-1 draw, and it was MLS opening day, like we said before. It was the first game for every team. And I came out of the game feeling very disappointed, not only in our own team's success and play style, but also in the overall quality of play in the MLS. It's just so much different when you watch the Premier League for 6 months without seeing any American football.
Yeah, I know. We were talking during the game, and I'd said this to you. I was like, wow, watching Premier League, the top level soccer you can find anywhere, for a couple months, and then seeing an MLS game, like that's when you realize the difference in players and the difference in level. That's just so much more. Like, I think first touch, just quickness of play, all of that. Just if you look at that, if you watch a Premier League game and then you watch an MLS game, that's the thing that stands out to me the most. And obviously, we'll get used to it, and
we will.
But that was definitely shocking to us.
It was shocking. It was so surprising. And it's crazy because I have the utmost respect for a lot of these players. I mean, Hasani Dotson, our very own, you know, the player that we name the show after, or we name a huge segment of the show after, plays on Minnesota United, and he's a phenomenal player and does really, really good things with Minnesota. And if you put him on a field with like anyone else, he's going to outplay them 100% of the time. Yeah. But it's just the little bit of extra decision-making and IQ and speed of play, like you were saying, where the Premier League just moves that bit faster and every touch is a bit cleaner. So instead of feeling like you're watching a game of run at the other team, lose it, run at the other team, lose it, run at the other team, lose it, which is what the MLS is like, and that can be interesting and very entertaining. When you watch the Premier League, it seems more methodical. It seems like every play is mapped out, and everything you do has a meaning behind it. And so you have to get used to just the difference in play. They both can be very entertaining, but they're so different.
Yeah, the execution is just levels above. But I think it's also good to realize that and then to really give credit to those MLS players that do go on to play Europe.
Exactly.
Like we've seen so many US players.
Or even Zlatan, who went to the MLS and then went all the way back to Europe and is doing fantastic.
Exactly. And
the adaptation.
Yeah. But for this game, the opening game, Robin Lod scored the opener, as he always does.
He scores it
left foot in the box. He wouldn't score any other type of goal. And, you know, we were feeling good.
The free kick was fantastic from our new signing in the center of midfield.
Yes. Kervin Arriga.
Yeah.
Arriga.
I think, yeah.
Yes, he played okay. And I think it is tough because we were missing Will Trapp.
We were missing Will Trapp. We were missing Methaner. That was
Gasper as well.
Oh, yeah.
So
we played Coleman. Who did we play at left back? We played Coleman.
We played Dabasi at left back.
Yeah, that's what it was. And then Coleman and Boxall.
Fisher at right back, who is our new signing from Galaxy. So we were missing 3 pretty big defensive starters for this game, but I think only conceding 1 on the road, where we've really struggled on the road, is definitely a positive to take. I think I noticed where our attacks came from counterattacks mostly.
Agreed, 100%. It almost felt like the whole game came from counterattack.
Yeah.
It was just end to end the whole time. And the craziest part about it was the space in the middle was enormous.
Yeah.
It was so big. There was no pressure on the midfielders. They could turn and just play it forward. And then it was just attack versus defense of each team. It was a strange game. I have to admit, it was a very strange game. But a point on the road, like you said, not a bad start when you're looking at overall performance from the team. Just like statistically speaking, you need points. You got points.
Yeah. I thought Reynoso also had a very good game. He looked back. Like, obviously,
he was not in jail.
Yeah, true. Obviously, the last game we saw him was the atrocious performance in the playoffs where we got knocked out. Was it Kansas City? I can't remember.
Yeah.
But that left kind of a sour taste in our mouth as looking at Reynoso. But this game, he really looked back to his best. He was really controlling. He was passing the ball more, had that energy. So that was good to see as well. Philly, a good side, and we'll take the point.
Agreed. Moving to the last game that we predicted, probably the biggest game of the week, and one that we've already covered a little bit. It is the EFL Carabao Cup Final, which, as we discussed earlier, finished in a penalty shootout, which Liverpool won. Kelleher, obviously the Hasani of the Week winner, was the goalkeeper for Liverpool during the game. And it was a very entertaining game for a 0-0 draw. I don't want to go into too much detail about it because we did cover it a lot, but there was some really outstanding performances. Kovacic did really well. And overall, I think it was one of those where you watch the game and it's very rarely do you ever stay glued to your TV when it's 0-0, but I did.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, the level of intensity that was in that game is that's what you hope for every time there's like a Big Six matchup in the Premier League, but it doesn't always turn out that way. But this game, every single player was sprinting, going into challenges. Like it was just back and forth and really entertaining. Obviously, there were a lot of chances for a 0-0, and it definitely shouldn't have been 0-0, but that's what it came out to be. Went to penalties. Liverpool came up on top. I hadn't seen Luis Diaz at all really in his first couple of performances, but I watched this game, and he's like very explosive from the wing.
He's very good.
I think he had like 5 no-look passes.
Yeah.
Did you see that? He kept doing no-look passes.
He's phenomenal.
Yeah. It was just really fun to watch. Kovacic, as you said, he's just earning my respect more and more every time I see him play. And then, I mean, the Kepa story is just...
The Kepa story is crazy.
Yeah.
Subbed on to help Chelsea in the penalty shootout because everyone knows Kepa is a penalty demon. He's a beast. He actually is really good at penalties, normally speaking.
Well, he refused to
come
to leave
off the field.
Last Carabao Cup that Chelsea were in.
And they won.
No, they lost.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
No, I thought they won.
I think they lost.
You got to research that. I'm pretty sure. I might be wrong. I don't want to question.
I think he stayed on. He was like, no, I'm good at penalties, at saving penalties, and then they lost the game. But
look it up. I want to see, because I think I've been telling everyone that I know, oh, yeah, they won that game. It was a crazy story. Let's see. Who won it? Oh, City.
Oh, it was City. Yeah,
but... It was
so
City.
he's not
got a great record in the Efl Carabao Cup Final.
Just in that, yeah.
Just those two control games.
Yeah, just in that competition.
Not great. But he did get subbed on to be in the penalty shootout and didn't save 10 penalties and then missed his own penalty. And it wasn't just missed wide or saved. It was out of the stadium.
Yeah. It looked like he almost...
hit a goal kick.
Exactly.
He ran up to it so nonchalant.
Was he paid off?
There is a chance. You know how nonchalant he ran up to that?
Yeah.
It was
and then
crazy.
he didn't even like react really.
Yeah.
Looking back on it, like he comes in, doesn't save a single penalty, and then when he has his time to do something where he doesn't have to save or anything, he actually has to kick a penalty, he just, boots it over the bar and then walks away. So, I mean, conspiracy, maybe?
Yeah, we could be saying, like, Peter Drury paid him off to try to get a better commentary.
True.
Did you see the Peter Drury day in the life?
I did see that.
He posted
just today,
it was great. I saw a little bit of
great.
him. He woke up, he ate his breakfast.
Arlo White also does those. Do you see those?
Yeah.
They're always fun to see.
Yeah, no, it's great to see, especially for a geezer like himself who's still
top geezer.
Top
bloke.
Top bloke.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was pretty fun to see that. And overall, in my opinion, best commentator in the world. But yeah, that game was crazy. The amount of offsides, I know Angie said in the chat, was Havertz ever onside. I think there was multiple,
so many.
5 to 10 offside opportunities that were called off, and then 3 offside goals.
Yeah, 1 for Liverpool, like 2 for Chelsea.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was crazy. It was a ridiculous game with regards to offsides and VAR. And there were some questionable VAR lines drawn.
True.
Definitely, especially in that Lukaku goal.
The Lukaku goal.
It was very, very questionable.
And Van Dijk getting called offside for interfering with play. I don't know.
It's a little bit of a shove, but I don't really know how that works. Leave it up to VAR people. I don't have enough knowledge in the books to be able to say
exactly
if that is actually a rule or not. Moving away from the matches that we predicted last week and just on to one bit of news that we want to cover before we get into our predictions for this next week. It is Jesse Marsch being the new Leeds manager. That meant that Marcelo Bielsa was parting ways, quotations around that, from the club. He was obviously forced to leave.
Asked to leave,
but he parted ways with the club. And it is important to remember that Bielsa was one of the best managers that Leeds have ever had and really helped them get back to their best, or I wouldn't say their best because they were fantastic in the late 1900s, but getting back to the Premiership and getting them in a place where the club hadn't been for quite a while and establishing a sense of community, I think, within Leeds fans. I think all of that was definitely due to Bielsa, and it's important to recognize that and appreciate him for what he did for the club. But as time comes for every manager at every club, like I was talking to someone about this earlier, but like how Chris Hughton had to leave Brighton and then Graham Potter came in, I have the utmost respect for Chris Hughton. He did great. He helped Brighton so much, but then we needed to change. It's a similar situation.
It is.
So.
I thought it was going to be a situation kind of like Norwich, I think, when they got relegated and they were awful like 2 seasons ago, but kept their manager and then came right back up with the same manager. I thought that's what was going to happen. I didn't really see this coming because Bielsa's loved so much by Leeds. But like you said, sometimes the club really has to take over and say it is time for a change. Jesse Marsch, obviously, I think second ever U.S. manager in the Premier League. And he came from New York Red Bulls to Salzburg to Leipzig. So he's in that Red Bull kind of system. And I'm really excited to see how he does. Obviously, I don't think Leipzig might. I think they've had a bit of a rocky season. I'm not sure. But he has Champions League experience, Bundesliga, and I think it's a good move. I think it is good for Leeds to try not a very known, like, just Brexit ball, as they say, like a Sam Allardyce or something like that.
Exactly. I do think it's interesting that he has made it to such a high level of managing when he only played in his senior career throughout the Americas. He played at DC United, and then he played at Chicago Fire for 7 years, and then moved to Chivas USA for 3 years to finish his career in the Liga MX. Mm-hmm. And so he has only really played in the Americas, Mexico, and the United States throughout his playing career. And then throughout his managing career, this is his first time really leaving the Red Bulls system. Yeah. He did manage Montreal Impact for a little bit before he went to the Red Bulls system at New York Red Bulls. That was only a year-long stint, and he did assistant coach with the USMNT back in 2010. But this is his first real time leaving that Red Bulls system and trying to branch out at a high level. So I'll be really interested to see how his time at Leeds goes. And another thing that I'm interested in keeping watch on is how Jesse Marsch is someone who's very keen on signing American players. He brought Brendan Aronson to Salzburg, a player who's been on our podcast. Caden Clark was signed with Leipzig while Jesse Marsch was there, and he brought Tyler Adams. He was a part of that deal, bringing Tyler Adams to Leipzig. So he has given a chance to a lot of American talent and then left a lasting impact on those clubs to continue wanting to bring American talent in. So I'll be very interested to see how that kind of bleeds into Leeds. Obviously, Jack Harrison, who played at Wake Forest, he's not American, but he did grow up in the United States and went to high school in the United States, and then went to college. So he is a product of the United States system, is obviously playing in the Premier League now. But I will be very interested to see what happens with his signings. Someone in the chat, Angie, just said Caden Clark to Leeds. I have no idea. I do have connection to Caden, but I have no idea if he is going to Leeds or not. I'm assuming that I'll be hearing that at the same time as you guys if that were to happen. But I just think overall for American players, it's a great pathway into the Premier League.
Yeah, like you said, I don't think we have another connection in the Premier League that can bring those U.S. players in. Obviously, at Man U, the former Red Bulls coach, I think, is an assistant coach under United Ralph.
Yeah.
So I think those are the only two. So, I mean, yeah, obviously there is that connection to Manchester United, but I think Leeds is a better option for a lot of young U.S. players, and especially Jesse Marsch's play style and what Leeds have been known to play. It's just a great club, and I hope they stay up. And I think they're in now with him taking over a good position to do that and to move on.
I would completely agree. I think, like you said, just very interested to see what happens with that Leeds team and if they can, climb their way up and stay in the Prem, and then see what happens in the coming years, and if Jesse Marsch is able to stay with them and make a lasting impact. Moving to everyone's favorite or second favorite part after the Hasani of the week.
Second favorite.
It has to be second. The predictions for next week. We have 3 games that we are going over. One is the what?
It's probably your least favorite part.
It's not. My record is bad. We can touch on the records in a second. But the 3 games on screen that we're going to be discussing for everyone listening is the Milan Darby, which will be happening in the Coppa Italia first leg. So they're meeting in the Italian version of the FA Cup, and then also the Manchester Derby, and then LAFC versus Portland Timbers, which is Timbers an MLS Cup finalist, and LAFC, the number one ranked team right now to win, or the number one team in odds to win the MLS Cup this year. Now looking at the records, I'm not doing so hot. 5-13 for myself. You have made a huge comeback, though.
I think
You can't say we.
I believe it's the first. No, I think we have our first 3-0 weekend.
Yeah.
Because
you went crazy.
I went 3-0, especially predicting a draw.
Yeah, you predicted a draw
as we've
for
talked about, is a
Philly,
lower,
Minnesota United.
Which, as we talked about, is a lower percentage choice.
As I did the math for last week.
Yeah, somewhat. Somewhat math. But yeah, I've broken even.
Which is insane.
I don't know what's going on.
You're going crazy.
Hopefully I maybe go positive for the first time.
That would
ever.
be incredible.
I don't think it's going to happen because I think that was like the first time I've ever been positive.
Well, the 3-0 really helps.
3-0 just boosts it. You really need a 3-0, a couple 3-0s.
I need 3 3-0s.
Yeah, which is possible. Anything's possible. These are some tough games to predict, I think. So
this is a very difficult one. I'm very likely to be 5-16 next week.
Not with that attitude, though. Right?
Because the attitude changes how the players play.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
you gotta have confidence.
Yeah. So the first game, Milan Darby. It's happening, like I said, in the FA Cup of Italy, the Coppa Italia. It's the first leg. They play 2 legs when they get this far into the competition, into the knockout stages, and AC Milan is currently second in the Serie A, and Inter Milan is currently third. They are both doing very well this year. We talked about Inter last week a little bit and talked about how Edin Dzeko has been filling in the role of Romelu Lukaku very well, and overall how they're firing well as a team. And then also AC Milan is doing very well. So it's a tough one to predict, and I'm very tempted to put my money on AC Milan, who is in second in the league right now and is higher up in points, but I have to go with Inter because I like them as a team. I think they have great potential, some great players, and I need to go with my heart. It's what I keep saying, but I think it's going to eventually salvage me.
It should pay off.
It's going to pay off. Yeah, that's the real question. If it pays off after the season's over, I'm kind of screwed.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll go AC Milan. That was going to be my choice anyway. And I think a Rafa Leao,
Leao
Ibrahimovic,
the Portuguese striker.
Great little.
They are doing very well up top together. Let me get their stats up real quick because those two are under an underrated strike partnership right now that's doing phenomenal in Europe.
I don't know how often I go for the favored team, but I think both teams are at home. There's no home advantage. They both play at the San Siro. So,
yes, which is a very interesting part of this derby.
Yeah, and like that's very unique for world football as well. But AC Milan is my pick. Do you have the stats?
I do have the stats.
The team is doing really well, so I'm guessing they're doing well.
So currently, if you add everything together, Rafael Leao, who is a young Portuguese striker, for anyone who doesn't know, he plays at AC Milan currently, strike partnered with Zlatan Ibrahimovic. He's played in 29 games, has 11 goals and 6 assists. So really good stats.
Very good, yes.
And I'll pull up Ibra's right now, but I would assume that he is having a similar year, if not better. But let's see here, just to make sure. I just totally spelled that wrong. I'm just going to go with Zlatan. I feel like Ibrahimovic is too much to spell right now. There we go. It's crazy that his market value is only 4.4 million. Obviously, it's because of age. But it's insane that his market value is so low. Zlatan has 19 games, 8 goals, 2 assists. So them combining for plus 20 goals and plus 15 assists or something around that number is absolutely incredible, with players outside of those two contributing to goals. Obviously, you have Fikayo Tomori, who is playing on AC Milan right now, and some other incredible players. So, yeah, it's going to be a very interesting one, but I'm going Inter. What did you say?
I said AC Milan.
Okay, nice. So, a one that we differ on and one that could pay out well for me or you.
I'm almost hoping that it pays off.
Yeah, I feel like you have this kind of pity for me now.
It's not going to be...
We all do.
Yeah, Study especially needs me to win.
It's not going to be very entertaining if you're, 20 games back and I'm like...
Imagine I'm like 5-30. come whatever 8 pods.
You don't win another one in 2 months. That would be tough.
Just go the rest of the season
Yeah.
without getting a single prediction right.
That would
I think
be
I'd quit the
extremely tough.
podcast if that
That'd be
happened.
more impressive.
That would be crazy impressive.
That'd be more impressive than me staying 500.
Now, yeah, because that's getting everything wrong, which is
Yeah.
also it's just as impressive as getting everything right.
Exactly.
So you could say
yeah, you could
that
say.
my record right now is incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next game that we'll be predicting is probably going to be the most watched game of this next week's period. It is the Manchester Darby. It has tons of history similar to the Milan Darby, but obviously it will be widely televised in the United States, which makes a huge difference in viewership and whatnot. So it is probably going to be the biggest game that we all hear about. And it has two teams that are, obviously Manchester United trying to climb their way up the table still, and Man City, who have found themselves in a very tricky situation over the past week, now only being 3 points clear of Liverpool.
Exactly. And they play Liverpool in a couple weeks, I believe. So for me, Man City with the win. I don't know if we're going to agree on this one or not. I don't know what your pick is, but I think Pep is, like you said, peeking around his shoulder, seeing Klopp coming up behind him, very close now. I think they're going to lock in for the rest of the season and try to make it not as close as it is now. And I think they're going to make a statement against a very, unpredictable.
Very shaky, I would say, because it's like they have the ability to do very well on a given day, but then they also can be absolute shambles.
Yes. A betting man would bet on the more reliable team, and I'm going to go with Manchester City.
Clearly, based on your record, you're a betting man.
Yeah.
And I'm learning from that, so I'm also going Man City.
There you go.
I don't want to... There's no way I'm going with Man United on this one.
Yeah.
And with that, it's probably going to go the other way.
Yeah.
It's probably going to...
It's definitely going to go United.
I feel like I am controlling the outcome of these results now, because whatever I say is going to be the other way.
It's just going to be the opposite. So we have different on the first one, same on the middle one.
So we can go same again on the last one.
We can?
Yeah. So, because it's only one that you can go different, right? Or no, it's only one.
One we can go the same, so we have to go different.
Oh,
on
we
this
do
one.
have to go different. Yeah, you're right.
So do you want to...
I'll go first.
Yeah, I'll give you
obviously-
the benefit here.
So for the last one, it is LAFC, the current favored winners of the MLS Cup, versus Portland Timbers, the previous MLS Cup finalists. And I'm going to go with an LAFC win. I think if Carlos Veya can continue the form that he had in his first game and bring that into this game, that's going to be huge. One thing to notice is that he was the only goal scorer from LAFC in their opening day performance. So that means if Carlos does not show up, there is a good chance that less goals will be going in. So I am desperate that Veya brings the same energy that he brought in that first game, but if he does, I think it's wraps for Timbers.
So
I'm going LAFC.
okay, my choice is either a draw or a Timbers win.
Yeah.
Are
you going to go LAFC?
I probably would have, but I don't. I'm also okay with taking the underdog here.
Okay, yeah. So are you taking the underdog? Not for a draw, you're taking them for a win.
It's an interesting.
It's also a hard one to say they're
It's a
the
hard
underdog
one.
because they did so well last year.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go, but it is hard because it is away. But they did draw in their opening game against New England, which is a solid performance. So I think they're gonna take away. They're gonna steal a win away in LA. Timbers win.
All right. Okay then.
Not confident about it, but
Yeah, well,
the record shows
if
yeah.
you get that one right,
If that's the one I get
I
right
swear
out of the three, then that would be incredible.
That's because of me as well.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
You need to quit.
Yeah, I would need to quit. We would need to stop doing predictions, or at least reset the records. I don't know if I can do that. That might be illegal.
That might be.
That might not be something that's allowed, but we'll see. That concludes the predictions that we have for next week. Some good games. I hope that you guys all can get a chance to watch each of those games. As I mean, 2 of them will be some of the biggest games
Very big
over the
games,
week.
yeah.
And then if you're obviously an MLS fan, I think the LAFC versus Portland Timbers game is probably
great players on show.
Yeah, great players on show, and probably the biggest game in the MLS
Yeah.
this coming week. But finishing it out with our fantasy performances throughout this past week or weekend. And overall, it was not a super ideal week from me, at least I know, for both the draft and my picked team.
Yeah, I mean, starting with my team, you see, I wasn't sure the game plan, my own game plan of having 4 starters not even be available to play for my fantasy team. But honestly, being only 4 points below average, the Southampton lads just carrying.
Oh, they did.
8 points, Livramento, 6 for Ward-Prowse, captain, and 6 for Che Adams.
I also had Salisu, and he got 5.
I mean, you can't ask for much more there.
You can't.
Especially from only what, 7 players playing?
Yeah.
So, and you got 32, above average.
I did. I got above average, but I'm very disappointed about it because on my bench, which you can't see, I had Matty Cash in 3rd position. So he is not subbing in, and he got 14 points.
So you did that last week, I believe, too.
I took Matty. Yeah, I did that with Salah. Yeah, so I'm not on a great streak with that.
Wow.
And I took Matty Cash out because obviously Villa were playing against Brighton, and I was like, "There's no way I'm gonna back a player who's playing against my team."
Yeah.
And then he goes on and scores and has a phenomenal performance, of course. And I had to watch that on the receiving end of that, so it was kind of like a double hit.
Dennis is an interesting one to captain.
Well, he's been doing very well.
Yeah, but out of the players you have, I feel like Bowen might have been a more logical choice, I'd say, even though he didn't do well. I mean, Dennis is just it confused. Well, I do have Ward-Prowse captains.
I feel like the Ward-Prowse captainship is probably...
Well, I have Fernandez and De Bruyne.
2 players that we don't think are going to play anytime soon. But yeah, overall, not a great week for the picked fantasy team.
Yes.
Moving to the draft, I finished with 20 points. This is one that's much harder to do anything about. You know, moving your team around is still possible, but with your given players that you drafted, it's very difficult because a lot of your subs and bench players are actual bench players on their teams. So your team pretty much stays the same throughout the year unless you make trades with other teams. So it's much harder to be more decisive or to make more decisions. But I think it's much more up to luck. But I did get 20 points this week, which I'm not happy about. It's not normal for my draft team. They usually get higher than that. And I did lose my match. I played against James, who was in the top of the league, and he had around 30 points.
I needed
you to
win that game.
You did need me to win that, which is unfortunate. You're trailing behind James by how many points?
3 points.
That's crazy. So if you guys don't know, I mean, I don't know if we've really explained the draft in detail and like how it works on here, but the draft is obviously you have your team that gets the amount of points based on how the players play, but each week you're matched up individually against someone else in your league, and whoever gets more points in a head-to-head gets the win for that week. So they get the 3 points, and then there's a table, kind of like normal soccer. So if you get like 3 wins, then you'll have 9 points. So right now, I think I'm in 4th. How many points do I have?
You're in 4th, 45 points.
So I have 45
tied with Eli in 3rd with 45 points.
Okay, and then how far am I from you?
3 points.
Okay, so it's pretty close at the top of the table. 6 points between me and James. So all of us at the top are actually doing pretty well, but it's going to be an interesting one. Towards the end of the year, it might get a bit feisty as there might be a title race going on.
Exactly. I won my match 18-14, very low scoring week there.
That's an interesting one.
But yeah, 18 points. Digne had a great performance. I mean, once again, Smith Rowe, Salah, and Van Dijk all just not playing.
It's not ideal.
No, it's not ideal, but at the same time, you get the win. Kyle Walker-Peters on the bench was not really what I wanted. 9 points from him.
That's tough.
But maybe he'll sub in. I'm not sure how it works.
I think it's set. No.
I did sub him in, though, because Southampton have a double game week
for your
this
draft?
week. Yeah,
Nice.
this week. So Walker-Peters is in with Ward-Prowse. Hopefully they do the business.
Get the job done.
Yeah. I mean, we're above Brighton, I believe.
Yeah, you are. You've just surpassed us this week. Let me go check the score.
It's a great little run we're on.
Oh, it is. You guys are doing really well right now. So, currently, Brighton is 10th, Southampton are in 9th, and you guys are 2 points ahead of us.
We played one more game, I think, right?
No, we have the same.
Oh, same now. Okay.
So, and actually, everyone within, both of the teams above and below you that are sandwiching you, Wolves and us, are on 26, and you guys are on 26. So you guys are well in that mix. And definitely, if you continue this form, can continue to climb the table. But I also think that the Seagulls are going to ramp it up a bit, obviously.
Graham's going to have a word.
He is. He's going to say, boys, come on. What are we doing here?
Boys, the beard is back.
Well, it's because Webster's been out.
Webdini.
Webdini is quite possibly the best center back in the league.
Is Duffy still playing?
It's a bit off and on.
He plays when he wants.
He plays when he wants. He goes after
Gaffer,
it.
I'm in.
Gaffer, put me in today.
Put me in this weekend. I'm ready.
Well, that's what you want out of your players.
Yeah. Take initiative there. Just like, I won't be playing. All right, I will be playing, actually.
This week, I'm opting out.
Yeah.
I have some other things I need to attend to. I'm guesting on the Class on Grass podcast this week, so I need to get my rest.
Exactly.
That's what Duffy would say.
Yeah.
Great excuse.
Mm-hmm.
With that, we will leave you guys for the rest of your night to make sure you get some good sleep. Obviously, we did actually get some feedback from some listeners about how late it is, especially for our Eastern time listeners.
East Coast.
Which we are taking into consideration now and possibly moving, because for you East Coast people, it's 10:45 right now, and that's a bit late. So we're going to think about it and try to rethink our times and maybe move it a bit earlier. But hopefully you can watch some of the games that we have predicted for this coming week, and you can enjoy yourselves, and we'll be back again.
We didn't even say.
Oh, we did switch the shirt.
New shirt here.
Before we leave, we did switch the shirt.
Hopefully you liked it.
It's a U.S. Futsal National Team shirt, but it's really quality, and it looks really good. And overall, I think suits the podcast well.
I think it's got a nice design there on the feed, so I think.
Oh, it does. Yeah,
I think it's a good replacement there.
We will leave you guys with that, and peace.